Well, welcome everybody. I'm Liz McGill, I'm the Dean of Stanford Law School, and I'm just delighted to welcome you to the 4th annual Stanford Bright Award for Sustainability ceremony to recognize our Bright Award winner. I want to thank everyone involved in the creation of this event and making this award happen, including faculty and students who served on the committee and the advisory committee who helped choose our honoree today. I want to particularly thank the Bright family. Ray's brothers, George and Mike, and their wives, and the family's longtime advisor, Alan Markle, and his partner are here with us today. Thank you for your support in this award and for advising us as we proceed forward and honor Ray's legacy. Let me tell you a little bit about Ray Bright. He grew up the son of a park ranger, and he grew up loving the outdoors. His passion for the environment carried on throughout his life, and he and his wife, Marcelle, made frequent visits to Yosemite, Death Valley, and other natural wonders all over the world. A graduate of Stanford Law School from 1959, Ray had a successful legal career, and he and Marcelle wanted to give back by supporting teaching and research on environmental law and conservation and policy, and they wanted to recognize people from around the world who were engaged in sustainability efforts. 3 years ago, we awarded the first Bright Award to Tasso Acevedo of Brazil, whose leadership led to an 80% reduction in the rate of deforestation in the Amazon, along with a 35% reduction of Brazil's greenhouse gas emissions. Yes, exactly. That's pretty amazing. 2 years ago, we awarded the Bright Award to Art Sterrett of British Columbia. Sterrett helped build a coalition of First Nation tribes and successfully negotiated agreements with the government to preserve the Great Bear Rainforest and create jobs for tribal members as part of that agreement and as part of creating a sustainable economy. Last year, we awarded the third Bright Award to Polly Cordes, who directs the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership at the University of Cambridge, where she's also the founder and director of the Prince of Wales Business Sustainability Program. Over the past 25 years, she and her team have provided practical training for business leaders and worked with hundreds of companies throughout the world to help put in place sustainable practices in business. This year's award winner, who you are about to learn a lot more about, Tom Lalampaa, is a worthy successor to these wonderful recipients, and we have a video to introduce you to him and his work that I know you'll enjoy, and then I'll be back.
Stanford University.
My name is Tom Lalampaa. I'm the Chief Programs Officer for Northern Rangelands Trust, an umbrella community organization currently supporting 33 community conservancies across northern Kenya. I've grown up looking after goats and kids and cows, and I've been in the wild almost all my life, except for the moments that I've been in school. The environment, it's all about the environment. Because we need grass for our livestock, we need water for our livestock, we need riparian vegetation for our livestock and wildlife. And so the environment became a very integral part of our life as cattle keepers. And I remember growing up, seeing a lot of challenges, seeing degradation of the environment, witnessing deforestation of our forestry, witnessing the destruction of our riparian vegetation. The option I had through our community was to take the leading role on matters of environmental conservation and sustainability.
The Bright Award is given each year to an unsung sustainability hero from someplace around the globe who has made a major contribution to the sustainability of local or regional communities, but is not necessarily known outside of their home country. Tom Lalampaa is the Chief Program Officer of the Northern Rangelands Trust, which is the most successful community-based conservation effort in Africa and I think anywhere in the world.
Kenya as a country is currently facing a number of environmental challenges. Some of the conservation challenges that the country is facing, first and foremost, is unplanned infrastructural development in the country. Now we are seeing railways, we are seeing superhighways, we are seeing mega dams, we are seeing power lines. What we are doing as an organization, as NRT, is to engage the local communities, to be able to understand, to be able to voice out, and we're also gently engaging the national government and the county government, just so that they understand that as conservationists, we are not opposed to development, but it should not be at the cost of our environment.
Northern Rangeland Trust today consists of 33 individual conservancies covering 10 million acres with 440,000 people within that area. The Northern Rangeland Trust has reduced the amount of elephant poaching within its region by over 50%. At the same time, it has brought new income to the residents of that area.
It's so important to enable the local communities to conserve and manage the environment and the wildlife that coexist there. And this can be done by creating incentives around that. Now the local communities are able to plan. They're able to zone their areas, where to graze during wet season, where to graze during dry season. I'm seeing now increasingly the communities through the conservancies repairing degraded rangelands. Jobs have been created where very few opportunities existed. We have seen now co-management arrangement between the communities and the government on forest management. We've seen now stability in northern Kenya, both in terms of wildlife numbers and also both in terms of species reintroduction. We've got now black rhino for the last 25 years. We've never had rhinos in northern Kenya, black rhino.
Tom is so bright, he is so hardworking, he has so many great ideas. He has gone beyond his job responsibilities to work on a variety of other critical issues for his communities. Issues such as maintaining peace, as well as helping to promote child and maternal health care. The committee is really hoping that this award will help Tom to further expand his work.
I'd envision a world where we conserve and protect our environment. It will benefit our people. It will benefit our current generation. It will benefit our future.
For more, please visit us at stanford.edu.
Well, as you now know, Tom Lalampaa is the Chief Program Officer of the Northern Rangelands Trust in Kenya. He's been a leader in NRT's design, development, and expansion, and has presided over its growth from a very small organization to its inclusion of, as the video said, 33 different conservancies covering 10 million acres, home to 400,000 people. Tom is both a conservation professional and a true diplomat. He not only oversees NRT's programs, and that ranges from conservation to community development, to governance, to enterprise, to peace building, to fundraising, but is also dedicated to helping the people solve problems in the areas of Kenya in which he works. This is what one of his colleagues observed. Tom is strong, and he is also a gentleman. His political instincts are well honed from years of working in politics, and he is able to quickly sort out a situation and know what to do. I once watched him bring several tribes together in a dry riverbed in northern Kenya. Just 1 year before, warriors from these groups were killing each other, and he was able to get them talking and eventually to resolve most of the lingering issues between these people. This area is now peaceful. This colleague continues. Tom listens well, he acts, he adjusts on the fly better than anyone I have ever seen. He is equally comfortable meeting with Prince William as he is eating grilled goat in his village with fellow elders. Tom is also very proud of his Samburu tribe, and he works hard to introduce new people to the culture and the way of life. I'll give you just a couple of examples of the critical work that Tom has been doing with NRT. NRT, as you heard a little bit about in the video, has implemented an innovative rangeland management program that seeks to combine traditional approaches to rangeland management, including land use planning and new techniques, including rotational grazing, bunched grazing, and land rehabilitation. So he's using traditional approaches along with new approaches. This program is reducing rangeland degradation to the benefit of the local residents. In 2014, a study showed that 70% of the rangeland in NRT conservancies were highly degraded, and over 50% of the area was heavily eroded, threatening both wildlife and sustainable pastoral livelihoods. NRT's program has successfully addressed this problem, benefiting 12,000 households with 1.8 million hectares under improved rangeland management. In addition, NRT has been involved extensively in wildlife conservation. It's also a central focus of their work. Wildlife conservation, of course, benefits from rangeland management, the program I just discussed. It's augmented by the use of conservancy rangers who provide security for both the people and the wildlife, preventing or following up on cattle raids, patrolling, and providing intelligence about poachers. NRT's programs have reduced elephant poaching alone by 43% in a 2-year period between 2012 and 2014. In addition, NRT has worked closely with conservancies to support targeted interventions for key endangered species. These have included the following: the first ever fenced-off predator-proof sanctuary on community land in Kenya dedicated to the conservation of a critically endangered species, the Hirola antelope. An island sanctuary to breed Rothschild's giraffe, the most endangered subspecies of giraffe in the world. And finally, a joint conservation effort to move 20 black rhino into a new sanctuary where this critically endangered animal has reproduced 25 years after the last individual was poached in this area. Tom has been essential to the success of all of these programs and more. In addition to his work at the NRT, Tom has served as the chairman of the Kenya Wildlife Conservancies Association, and in that role, he played a critical role in passing the Kenya Wildlife Conservation and Management Act. He's also a member of the Kenya Wildlife Services Board, is vice chairman of the Wildlife Security Task Force, which was formed by the Kenyan government to assess and make recommendations for improving wildlife security in the country, and he serves on the Africa Council of the Nature Conservancy. In recognition for his outstanding contributions to northern Kenya's communities and their wildlife, Tom received the inaugural Tusk Award for Conservation in Africa from Duke of Cambridge in 2013. For all of these reasons and many more, I am incredibly proud to present the 2016 Stanford Bright Award for Environmental Sustainability to Tom Lalampaa. I will give... I'm going to now actually give you the award, Tom. But following, and then Tom is going to speak to us. Following his remarks, Professor Buzz Thompson, the Robert Paradise Professor of Natural Resources Law at the Law School, the founding director of the Law School's Environment and Natural Resources Program, and the former Perry L. McCarty Director of the Woods Institute for the Environment, and chair of the selection committee for this award, will lead a discussion and Q&A with Tom after his talk. So Tom, let me give you this award and let's take some pictures. Now we'll leave you to it. Congratulations.
The Bright family, the leadership and management of the Stanford University Law School, the law students, partners, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first take this opportunity to sincerely thank the Bright family for such a very innovative Stanford University Law School Bright Award for Sustainable Environmental Sustainability. It's such a very innovative award, and I really feel honored about it. I also wish to take this opportunity to thank the committee for selecting me for the 2016 award. But I must say that I could not believe it at first sight when I heard about it and when I got the letter. When I got the letter, I had to reread it further. I had to read it to Grace, my wife, sitting here today, who is visiting the US for the first time. And I had to read to my family. We couldn't believe it at first. But however, I must say that I'm extremely humbled to have been nominated and selected for this award. I want to say a little bit about myself, to say what I know about myself and actually what I don't know. There are some things I don't know about myself, and there are some bits that I know. To start from the unknowns, I honestly don't know when I was born, the exact date, the exact month, the exact year. I have a rough idea when I was born. I was born during one of the eclipses of the sun. My mom tells me it was during the dry spell. And so I've always tried to put it together. So I had the opportunity to pick my favorite date of the month, a favorite date, birth, and a favorite year. And no wonder recently when I was traveling in the US, a friend was traveling with me, tapped me on the back. We are checking in and say, Tom, happy birthday. I look back and say, what about it? I say, I'm looking at your passport. I say, okay, sorry, I'm not quite sure, but thank you. That's what I don't know about myself, a little bit for exact, but I know roughly the range because my parents never went to school. But let me say that I was born and brought up in northern Kenya. I was brought up looking after my father's livestock. I come from a pastoral community whose life really depended on livestock. And during the school holidays, and all before going to the school, to the boarding school, so years, I used to look after my father's livestock and occasionally losing some few to predators, to lions, and occasionally get bitten for being careless to let the livestock be attacked by the predators. But having grown up in northern Kenya, interacting with the environment as it is, looking after livestock, mingling with wildlife, I started building a strong sense about the environment, knowing very well that all these are interlinked, knowing very well that my father's cattle are entirely dependent on the health of the environment, the health of the rangelands, the health of the forest and the riparian vegetations around us. I've grown up in a very strong Maasai culture. And being a pastoralist and coming from a pastoral background, operating a lot of time in the wild, I've interacted with the nature a lot. And where possible, where my family was able to pay for my education, it's because then the environment around us was able to support our livestock. But there were those times that the environment around us could not support our livestock, and we lost most of them during the drought. And that was the time the local community from the villages where I come from came together and supported me to go through the university education. I want to talk a little bit about the challenges growing up in northern Kenya, because I've been born and brought up in northern Kenya, and I've continued to work in northern Kenya. One of the challenges in northern Kenya is about poor environmental management. Our traditional natural resource management systems, known by our forefathers, started going down. And what we started witnessing was massive degradation of our rangelands. The very rangelands that our livestock, that our wildlife entirely depended upon. we started witnessing a lot of deforestation. We've got some scattered pieces of forest, but we're losing them very fast because of people cutting them down for fodder to feed livestock, or just from the wildfires emanating from the honey harvesting. I continued growing up witnessing a lot of competition for both pasture and water in northern Kenya, where I come from. And in the process, being cattle people, we kill wildlife. We kill elephants because of the conflict for water. Elephants go for the little water in the deep, shallow wells, and they fall into our wells. They destroy our traps where we give our cattle, and in the process, we spear them and we kill them in that process. The other challenge in northern Kenya, growing up and witnessing as we work, is underdevelopment. In this case, marginalization. We witness very poor public services in northern Kenya, when you compare to other areas. And also the fact that there's a very low human capacity in northern Kenya. The other challenge growing up in northern Kenya, being the environment I was born and brought up and still working, is conflict. Northern Kenya being a pastoral sort of economy, there's a lot of cultural issues. We practice what we call livestock theft, livestock raids. We steal each other's livestock. We don't break the banks, but instead we steal the cattle. And there's always been an element of ethnic mistrust. We've got about 15 ethnic groups or communities in northern Kenya, and there's always an element of mistrust. The other challenge in northern Kenya, the dry part of northern Kenya, has been poaching of wildlife, mainly because of the illegal firearms. We've got a lot of illegal firearms in northern Kenya in the hands of civilians. And in the process, we've witnessed a lot of insecurity and the subsequent impact on the livelihoods of our families, with people losing livestock or with just people with guns killing wildlife. The other challenge in northern Kenya has always been poor resilience growing up. We're witnessing persistent droughts, long periods of dry spells, limited livelihood options. It's a livestock economy, and so there have been very limited livelihood options or opportunities to improving the livelihoods of our communities. The skills and technology has always been low, being a remote parts of the country that's not quite accessible by roads, good roads, and the low levels of investment, obviously because of insecurity. And partly because of the weak governance system in the northern part of the country. However, Theodore Roosevelt, 1910, once said that conservation means development as much as it means protection. We lost the way as northern Kenya communities, and we are now finding it again. We lost it. We lost the way for various reasons. Because we have embraced the culture of degradation, the culture of accepting degradation of our land, the culture of failing to manage our land, the culture of deforestation, the culture of allowing poaching to thrive in our landscape. These has been some of the cultural changes that we've been witnessing in northern Kenya. But through the new conservancy initiatives, under the Northern Rangeland umbrella, things are changing. And that's why I say I like this quote, because now the communities of northern Kenya are now back on the track and now finding their way back over the years. I want to talk a little bit about the organization I work for, the Northern Rangeland Trust. Northern Rangeland Trust was born out of Lewa Wildlife Conservancy, and I appreciate seeing some of the board members here, which has been great, because Lewa has been a learning school for us. Northern Rangeland Trust is an umbrella organization started in 2004, whose mission is to develop resilient community conservancies that transform lives, secure peace, and conserve the natural resources of northern Kenya and now get into the coastal part of this country. But what's a community conservancy? A community conservancy is a community-owned and managed local institution with a defined community, defined area of communal land with democratically elected local boards to govern the local land development with all the dimensions on environment, on social and economic. And the success of the Northern Rangeland Trust model to date has been credited to the stability of these local institutions. The Northern Rangeland Trust, as we speak now, supports 33 community conservancies across northern Kenya, which covers over 44,000 square kilometers and a home to 480,000 people from 15 different ethnic groups in northern Kenya. The Northern Rangeland Trust provides oversight to all these 33 community institutions. We build a capacity, we provide the capacity to be able to support them, we fundraise for them, we support them on program development and capacity building. The idea has always been Northern Rangeland Trust will never be there forever. And our ultimate thing has always been to build the capacity of the local communities in northern Kenya to be able to lead the process themselves. The model has been hugely accepted as successful, both locally, nationally, and internationally. We do assess the impact on the ground, and the Nature Conservancy has been good in giving us the tools or developing for us the science, conservation science, that we can use to measure the impact alongside other partners, including the USAID, the Dutch, the French, all supporting these programs. And all the tools we use to measure the impact on the ground are simplified, localized to the extent that the local people who have not gone to school from these local communities are able to utilize these tools. And thanks to the Nature Conservancy for enabling us to do this monitoring, because they are very good on conservation science. I just want to highlight some few impacts, major impacts on the ground, because I'm a field person. I traverse the field most of my time. And so I just want to outline some of the major impacts. And the first impact really is on the environment, the environmental impacts. The first under this is improving the rangelands. Currently, over 2 million acres of communal land is under active management and planned grazing management by the local communities themselves. In northern Kenya, the land is owned by the local communities, and it's so important that they're empowered or enabled to improve the rangelands. The big part of the northern parts of the country is open rangelands, rangelands that the wildlife and the livestock entirely depend on. And so getting the local communities, the local village people, the indigenous people, to actively manage the rangelands is a huge thing, because it benefits both wildlife, it benefits livestock, and it benefits everybody across the board. Currently, 97% of the households benefit from grazing management, and they have all embraced it. We are getting the local communities now increasingly, as I was traveling, doing massive rehabilitation of degraded rangeland through reseeding. They now plant grass, and those grass will benefit wildlife. They will heal the rangelands, and our rangelands will get healthy back again. We continue to see massive gully healing by these local communities. We continue to witness a lot of bunching of livestock, as opposed to allowing cattle to graze all over. Currently, the local communities are in a better position to bunch the cattle You have 20 cattle, you have 50, you've got 100. We bunch them together so that we can use them as a tool to break the land that's becoming more bare, so that even water can percolate and get the grass back and get the water to get into the soil. Typically, the pastoral communities move with the livestock. But increasingly, the communities have seen the need to coordinate the movement. Because that way, then, you're able to manage a lot of things, from peace, from improving security, and just from ensuring that there's a systemic planned grazing. And so increasingly, what we are seeing now is a very coordinated livestock movement across the land, which is really great, because then you build leadership as cattle move around the rangelands. Interesting enough, what we see again in improving the management of the rangelands is that the local communities now are in a better position to develop grazing management bylaws. These are laws developed by elders, by herders, to govern grazing with penalties enforced by the elders. The other impact is improved forest management. We've got 2 community conservancies that have now put over 100,000 acres of forestry into active management, managing the forest very well, at the same time utilizing them, the forests. And so these are new development in northern Kenya, where the communities are taking the lead, and where necessary, engage the national government through a co-management arrangement so that they're able to own the forests, they're able to manage them, and they're even able to graze with a good plan. The third major environmental impact has been on wildlife conservation. Wildlife numbers in northern Kenya are getting more stable or increasing in other species. And this can only be attributed to the local communities in northern Kenya who are taking the ownership currently, who are looking after them, who are opening up the space even for this wildlife. And so increasingly we are seeing the numbers getting better. We're also witnessing reduction in poaching. In 2015, we recorded 53% decline in the proportion of illegally killed elephants since 2012. And this is significant. And this can be only attributed by the fact that our local communities are now owning up, they are looking after, they're able to report incidences, and also the strong legislation that we have in Kenya currently. But what that really translates to is the fact that the local communities are now in a better position to try and stop poaching from the source. They might not have the capacity to stop the demand or to fight the demand, but are in a better position to stop poaching from the source where they're being killed. As you may have heard, the black rhinos in northern Kenya were wiped out 25 years ago. And typically when I go for these community meetings, the elders keep asking, Tom, what happened? We used to have black rhinos here 25 years ago. And a number of them have started asking, could we have rhinos back to our ranges? And as we speak, we've now gotten black rhinos back to those original territories, those original ranges, 25 years after they were wiped out. And the communities are looking after them, they're taking care of them. School children are seeing them again back, and it's such a great thing. We've got some of the most endangered wildlife species. We've got the famous Irola antelope. It's estimated that probably 450 individuals still exist in the world, just 450. And are mainly found in northern Kenya and part of south of Somalia. And the big challenge for them has been loss of habitat and a bit of poaching and hunting. But 2012, we did a bit of breeding with the local communities by getting them engaged, and the numbers in those breeding sanctuaries have just doubled That means with the community support, with the better management of their ranges, they can be released. They can be back again to the community. And when you talk to some of these communities, they have a lot of pride and attachment to these species. Economic impact. From the commercial side of things, for the first time, we've gotten livestock, cattle, to generate income or revenues to support conservation. The trend has always been the other way around, where elephants contribute to improving their livelihoods. But now what we're witnessing through a very structured livestock to markets program, through the support of the Nature Conservancy, is to structure some livestock markets such that the conservancy are able to generate revenue or income to support elephant protection and support wildlife conservation, and also rangeland improvement. And this is done because we use it to incentivize good conservation, to reward those community conservancies that are doing good grazing plans, they are keeping peace, they are fighting poaching, they are doing good governance, they're able to share their benefits very well. And we reward them by giving that opportunity to sell their cattle through that very structured market, as opposed to selling to these other local markets where the middlemen squeeze them very hard. Tourism. Just because of the stability created now in northern Kenya, because of the conservancies, now we're seeing increased investment, tourism investment into northern Kenya. The part of a country that nobody could have ever imagined in the last 10 years, that someone could dare invest a tourism facility in northern Kenya because of insecurity, because of poor governance, and just because there was a total breakdown on matters of security, on matters of governance, and the place was just branded as insecure. But within a very short time, we've been in a position, in partnership with our local communities, through the conservancies, turn around that landscape, make it the most secure, now attracting private investment into these areas. And in the process, the communities are able to tap on revenues to support conservation, to support environmental conservation, and protect wildlife, and improve the livelihoods of our local people. We've got the Northern Rangeland Trust for-profit company that's looking at business opportunities within all these community conservancies. And very interesting, they go to every conservancy, they sit down with the elders on the ground, with the women and youth, and really try and explore what commercial opportunities are there for them to tap on. And one of the big ones that's now really doing very well is beadworks. Beadworks. Grace makes this for me. She's very good in making this. But increasingly now, we are getting our women organized into groups through the conservancies and able to do quality beadworks that now are getting into US markets, the UK markets, into Australia markets. And in the process, women are able to pay for their children's school fees, they're able to put food on the table. And very interestingly, for the first time now, this year, women now are making contribution from the beadwork to support conservation. The first 6 months of this year, they generated Kenya shillings 600,000, which is about 6,000 US, about there, from their own beads. And women present a check to the conservancy and tell the manager and the chairperson, this is our contribution from our own needle that we make these beads. Please use them to pay our rangers, put the fuel into the vehicle, and also support bursaries and health. And so it becomes another contribution, a situation where you're seeing now, we are continuing to see our local community now contributing because it's about them, it's about their lives, it's about their environment, it's about their wildlife, it's about them. And so the ownership starts getting there. When someone sells a cattle through the NRT livestock to markets, someone contributes $100. Because the grass this cattle was fed on is a common resource, and we need it. And so you get communities that are getting more organized and able to contribute. In the slide I saw, and thanks for the slide, I remember being in Tana River with some of the conservancies there, and you saw in the film piles of mango fruits. That's a farming community, and they produce massive mangoes, but there's no market. The markets are far away. And what they were able to structure through the conservancy is that let's sell our mangoes as a conservancy, as a community. And for every kilo of mango fruit, we make a contribution to conservation. We make a contribution to our conservancy. We make a contribution towards supporting our conservation. And that's what is happening with those mango farmers. Down in the coast, because we support about 2 marine community conservancies. Those are fishing communities. Through the Nature Conservancy, we are in advanced stages of developing a mangoes to market program, where this community sells mangoes as a community. And for every kilo of a fish, there's a markup, there's a contribution that goes to supporting conservation and supporting the conservancy initiatives. And so you can see a situation where there's a complete mindset change, where the communities are contributing from the cattle to supporting conservation. They're contributing from the beets. They're contributing from the mango fruits. They're contributing from the fish, because it's something they have owned it. It's something that they feel that it's about them. In northern Kenya, there are very few or limited employment opportunities. Not very many organizations operate there because it's a harsh environment. But through the local conservancies network, over 1,000 permanent jobs have been created, supporting their families, and many more through tourism, and many more through casual employment. And so, by so doing, we are retaining more people, either who have gone to school, like Tom, in the north, to work with their local communities and support them. The social impact. First and foremost, the big hit has always been improving peace and security in northern Kenya. I was telling a friend that in the case of northern Kenya, when there's no insecurity, good security, when there's insecurity and when there's no peace, for instance, the environment also suffers, conservation suffers. For those of us who are cattle keepers, when there's an insecurity this end, we all move our livestock and our families and our children to safer grounds. And so when we move, we all concentrate in one place with all our cattle, with all our families. And we're talking about a very fragile ecosystem. And so all of a sudden, you start realizing overgrazing. You start mounting pressure on that piece of land, which is more secure, because you are running away from insecurity. But if you got a very good security and stable peace, you're able to plan well for the fragile ecosystem. Over 745 community rangers have been employed, who have been ears on the ground and eyes on the ground. They're on radios, they're listening. If there's anything, they'll let everybody know. The other thing on the social impact is about improving the livelihoods of the local communities. Conservation and environment must contribute to improving the livelihoods of the people. And it's only by doing so that the communities can invest or can embrace conservation, preservation, protection of our environment, of our wildlife. And just last year alone, 2015, about 2,000 needy students from very poor families benefited from the bursaries provided by the conservancies, from the revenues that they generate. And that's massive. Because what you see in northern Kenya is scenarios where children or students from needy backgrounds drop from school. So if you talk about 2015, 2,000 needy students who have been enabled to go to school, whether universities or high school or middle-level colleges, is a big thing for the local communities on the ground. We've continued to see massive investment by the conservancies on water and also on health to improving their peoples. In summary, the NRT conservancy model has helped to inform a number of legislations in Kenya. One being the Wildlife Management and Conservation Act 2013, which was modeled alongside what we've been able to demonstrate on the ground. Because all those years we've been doing conservation and supporting conservancies, there was not a single legislation recognizing conservancies in the country or community. And I remember sometimes some of our donors asking me, Tom, how do we support a conservancy initiative that's not provided for in the law? I said, no, please, let's just go on. The law will catch up with us. And finally, the law caught up with us later, 2013. Now, we've got a robust legislation, thanks for the initiatives that were started earlier on that informed the law. We've got the Community Land Law 2016, signed by our President 26 August last month. Much of it has also been borrowed from the conservancy initiatives that we support, because they informed how the communities are managing the land. And that's really great for us, because now we've got a very strong foundation to support community conservancies. The NRT conservancy model is now generating huge demand for expansion. We are under pressure to expand. The county government are mounting pressure on us to expand. The local communities are mounting a lot of pressure for us to support more and more conservancies, because everybody feels it's the right way to go. It's a grass-rooted approach. However, we also have our share of challenges. Challenges are there. One of the challenges really is about accelerating growth, needing transformative change through multiple private, government, and civil society partnerships. The second big challenge we are facing is generating sustainable financing to support the model. And this could be through effective mix of commercial, government, and donor or public financial support. The NRT conservancy model has proven success in integrating biodiversity conservation with improved development. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say that I'm extremely delighted to be here today to accept the 2016 Stanford University Law School Bright Award for Environmental Sustainability. And I hope this award will inspire a new generation of African conservation leaders going forward. The future is on conservation. Asante sana. Thank you.
We have time for a brief discussion and then questions after that. And I want to just start out at the very beginning by thanking you very much for all of the fantastic work that you have been doing with the Northern Rangeland Trust. It is a great privilege and pleasure to have both you here and your wife Grace here, and I'm very pleased that she was able and willing to accompany you on this particular trip. So what I will do is I just want to ask you 3 or 4 questions, and then I will open it up more generally for questions. I want to start out with a question just to begin to get to know you a little bit better. And that is, how did you become involved with the Northern Rangeland Trust to begin with?
Well, thank you very much. When I got a chance to go to school, or let me put it this way. Sorry, I have a cold. In the US and when All right. Well, thank you very much. I was just trying to say that in the plane and when you're around, people like serving everything ice cold.
It's a problem
back
with
home,
traveling.
we serve everything hot and from the pot. And so, first and foremost, just to say that I got a chance to go to school by the fact that my elder brother declined. And so I got a chance to go to school. And the village where I come from, or the place where I come from, Westgate, I happened to be sort of the first kid to go to school. And somewhere midway, when I joined the university, we lost the livestock to there's a drought, the famous 1991 drought in Kenya. And so I got supported by the community through some scholarship and bursary. But completing the university, the community requested me to come back and support the establishment of Westgate Community Conservancy, which happened to be the sort of the first manager, basically starting it from the scratch, from all the awareness, board formation, institutional building. And so I continued working for Westgate Community Conservancy, where I come from, until 2006. That was 2004, 2006, when the opportunity came up to joining the bigger umbrella of Northern Rangeland Trust, which gave me an opportunity to support broader number of conservancies. So I got engaged, and I've always been very grateful for the opportunity to serve across the northern Kenya.
So you had mentioned a moment ago that I understand that you actually helped to begin the Westgate Community Conservancy. So since I've never done this, how does one go about starting a conservancy? How did you convince your community that this was something that they should invest their time and effort into?
First and foremost, the conservancy establishment is built on trust, because it involves a lot of awareness, a lot of sensitization on why we need to do it. Land in northern Kenya is owned by communities, and every community knows the size of their land. Westgate is about 5,000 hectares, and we had to do massive awareness of all our community members to understand the concept and why we want to do it and what we want to address. But even as you go doing that, communities look at you, they listen at you, they have to trust you, they have to build some confidence with you. And you have to be consistent on what you do and how you want to take them forward. And so in the process, it's about building an institution. From the formation of the local board of elders and women and youth from that community, through the registration process, through all the board trainings, and through the recruitment of the staff, and ensuring that everything is stable to the extent that you are even able to establish the conservancy headquarters, and also structure all the programs. But it's quite a process. It takes about probably 3 to 4 years really to get things up and running and very stable. And it's quite a process that can take you back and forth occasionally. But just being persistent and building the trust and building the confidence within the communities. And once you have their trust and confidence, they'll be with you.
Yeah. So clearly the Northern Rangeland Trust and all the conservancies within it have been extremely successful. We saw that in the earlier presentation, Dean McGill's presentation, your talk. And you're making real progress in north central Kenya, but there are vast other areas of Africa that have been suffering from very similar problems. And I'm curious as to what degree you think the Northern Rangeland Trust can be a model for solving similar issues elsewhere in Africa.
The conservancy model being pioneered by the Northern Rangeland Trust, I think is applicable in many parts of Africa and other areas, of course, with a bit of tweaking. When we started off, we never knew that we could apply the same model, conservancy model, in the marine side of things. However, currently we support 2 conservancies which are purely marine in the coastal strip of Kenya. And you just tweak it a little bit to involve the beach management units. We are getting a lot of visits into Lewa, into NRT, from across Africa. Last week, we just had a big team from Zambia. We're getting teams from Tanzania, from Uganda, from other African countries. And we are learning, we are really talking. And so the model is applicable, but of course with some modifications, depending on the landscape across. But it has drawn a huge attention across, I would say, Africa for a start. And it's all about really local institutions that can manage whatever we cherish, which is conservation, environment, and livelihoods.
So you also spent a lot of time during your comments talking about the various programs of the Northern Rangeland Trust and some of the keys to success. But when you do have a delegation from elsewhere in Kenya or elsewhere in Africa who come to visit the Northern Rangeland Trust, and they say, Tom, we want to learn from you. You know, what is the 1 or 2 things that we can take away from the Northern Rangeland Trust that will help us be successful? What would you say?
First and foremost, given the number of visitations that we are having every month, people coming, I think the Northern Rangeland Trust has gone to a level now where, to start with, we don't even accompany visitors or our visiting teams to the field. You know, we talk to them, they say what model they're looking at, you know, and then we just send them to the field, let them go and talk to the elders, let them hear, let them talk to the women, let them talk to the boards, and really just have one-on-one. The thing that you'll take from the NRT Conservancy model, first and foremost, is about community institutions in the name of the conservancies. To us, that is so key, because whatever we're trying to do is about communities. It's about their land. It's about their environment. It's about their wildlife. And so to us, most key to us, and the success of NRT model has always been on these grassrooted community institutions in the name of the conservancies. The second big thing that you'll always take from the NRT Conservancy model is good governance. Good governance is so key. And NRT, Northern Rangeland Trust, provides oversight to matters of governance in these conservancies. In a situation where there's no good governance in a conservancy, that conservancy can easily break. And good governance in a conservancy is appointed to a very good board, is appointed to very good managers or senior staff on the ground, because then they're able to do good benefit sharing across the landscape, because there are a lot of benefits, whether jobs or service delivery. Good governance in terms of financial audits every year. Good governance in terms of holding annual general meetings to share the plans and progress and listen to the communities. Good governance on matters of rangeland. Everything boils down again to governance. And so I think 2 key things you always take, and anybody who visits like it, is about community institutions, local community institutions, and good governance of the programs of land, of conservation, environment, and everything that goes on within that community landscape.
Okay. Okay. So in a moment, I'm going to open it up for a couple of questions from the audience. But I do have one last question of you, which is that, as hopefully you know, the Bright Award comes with a $100,000 prize that you are then free to do whatever you want with. Have you given any thought to how you're going to use any of that $100,000? And you're not bound by your answer, so you can change your mind later.
We're still consulting. I'm looking at Westgate Community Conservancies, that conservancy in particular, which I pioneered, is home. My mom still lives there. My few cows and goats are still there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I go and look after them. But there's a discussion we're still having. We are very good on engaging the community, the local boards, to think through the process, and that's where we are at the moment. But basically, I'm more looking into Westgate Conservancy.
Okay. Excellent. So again, we have time for a couple of questions from the audience. I have plenty more if you don't. Right there.
Regarding saving the elephant ivory and the rhino horns, I hear that they're dying to make them not marketable. And are you employing that? And are you using any of the modern tools like infrared cameras from drones to find the poachers?
Okay. So in the future, we'll get the microphones around faster here. I think I surprised people by going to the audience. But did everyone in the back hear that question, or did you want me to repeat it? Okay, great.
Poaching is a big problem. And as I mentioned, for the first time in 2015, we've had a 53% decline in the proportion of illegally killed elephants since 2012 in northern Kenya. And the proportion of poached elephants is much less in areas covered by the conservancies as compared to areas outside. We are working with various partners, including the Kenya Wildlife Service, for instance, for the case of Kenya, and other partners, the Lewas, Wildlife Conservancy and other partners, to tap on some technology to combating poaching. But as I mentioned, the local communities are helping us to stop poaching from the source. We're not in a position to fight the demand. I think the governments are engaging on that demand side of things, but us, we are really concentrating with the ground. There are a lot of technologies that are now doing on rhino horns, either in terms of putting a small chip that they're able to track or they're able to monitor. But still, poaching still takes place. It's a societal issue. We don't use drones, but I know some of the partners use it. But ultimately, it's about communities. For the case of Kenya, I think we normally say that about 60% of our wildlife are outside protected, formally protected areas. So they're out there free ranging with cattle, with livestock, mingling with people. And so to stop that kind of poaching, you really need just the support of the local communities to stop it. But poaching is happening in formally protected areas with all the fences, with all the technology, and even the community. It's a challenge. Technology is being tried, but for us, we work with the local communities on community lands, and so we're engaging them to try and push this down.
So there's a question here.
Oh, thank
And
you.
there's a microphone right there.
This is even better. Well, I'm really awed by the fruitfulness of your efforts. My husband and I have been part of peace teams in Kenya the last 5 years, and I've witnessed firsthand the conflict between the pastoral people and the agricultural people, particularly in Tana River and recently, but also near Mombasa. So that's partly why I'm so much in awe of what you've accomplished. My question is, this is not my field. My field is interfaith education. And what I'm trying to understand is when there's erosion and scarcity of water, how are you able to sustain the water levels? And I understand about the moving the grazing and protecting that, managing that, but the water, the scarcity of water, and how you address erosion, how you've done that. If you could address that, I'd appreciate it.
Right. Thank you very much. The reality is that there's always been conflict, wildlife conflict with the pastoralists and also agriculturalists. It's been less and less with the pastoral communities, with awareness. They're getting to know what time the lions strike, what time the cheetahs, the leopards strike, and how best they can strike. There's a lot of awareness now around the pastoral. On the agricultural, there are also several organizations. We don't have a lot of agriculture where I come from, but there are a lot of efforts being done from using chili and other sort of things. When it comes to water, that is the biggest conflict between pastoralists and the elephants is water. And where we come from is pretty dry. And we're seeing, when it gets dry, the riverbeds get dry, the water table goes down, we dig beneath the sand and get the water. And it can be very many feet, it can be about 4 people, from there, here, and to the extent that someone draws water using a gallon from here, gives the second person, the third, the fourth, and then the last one puts on the trough for the livestock. It's a big challenge. We're trying to manage. We're trying to get the pastoral herders so that to convince them that once you have watered your cattle, leave some water on the trough and close the well because it's so deep. It's a hole. It's like a manhole. So increasingly now in the north, we are finding communities being impressing to the extent that once they have watered the livestock, they leave lots of water on the troughs, on the livestock troughs, so that when the ellies come, the elephants, or oryx, or giraffe, they can access that. Because what we are seeing in northern Kenya is a situation where angry elephants come, very thirsty, or calves, they go straight into the well. And so the first thing in the morning is to get them out using the ropes. And now the baby elephants, there's one conservancy that has just established the first of its kind elephant orphanage, which is Namnyak. And why? Because we're having so many baby elephants being abandoned either through the wells or being abandoned by the mothers, and so the community have created a home so that they can just release them once they are. So one is about getting the herders to leave some water in the troughs. The second thing we're trying to do right now is to engage with an organization called Excellent Development to do sand dams, to do sand dams in most of the rivers so that you break the flow. And in the process, the water percolates and the water table rises. And then just by digging, even elephants dig for themselves if the water is very shallow. In the sort of same permanent rivers, the rangers also sort of just make sure that they have dug some shallow water in the sand, in the riverbeds, and elephants and other wildlife assess it and start something like that. We have also, like for the case of Lewa Wildlife Conservancy, for instance, they have managed their rivers to the extent that the springs have come back and water is now flowing all through. And so by so doing, you get the water available. A lot is being done. The surface runoff is typical when the areas are degraded. The soil is so hard, water can't go down because it has really been hit badly. And so through rangeland management programs, you get water even to go down. And so there's a lot happening. We do a lot of water for wildlife, and we also do for people. What we normally make sure is that if we get any donor funding, we make sure that water serves both wildlife, livestock, and people. because you can't isolate. And so we normally plan with the local communities, knowing very well what points do the wildlife elephants require water. And then you can put their water there, and then for communities, you pipe them down a little bit. So we try to look at water because it's so critical.
So we have time for one last question in the very back.
Is this on? Oh, yeah. So what I found really quite interesting was the apparent ideology of the trust, in so much as you guys don't expect to always be there. And I think that's very far-sighted and very wise, if I may say. And I was wondering if you'd be willing to speak to how that, if you think you have time, to maybe a specific instance where that ideology has come into play. I mean, you're just a facilitator. You don't want to own these situations so much as you want to be a intermediary. And if you'd just be willing to speak to that philosophy and how it's impacted the work of the trust. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think the reality on the ground is that currently we are majorly donor-funded by the Nature Conservancy, the USAID, the DENS, and the DASH, and the FDs. And we are trying to look at a 10, 15, 20 years horizon. And we're engaging these local communities. And so one of the first things we did was to create a for-profit company within the NRT, within the Northern Rangeland Trust, whose sole mandate is to focus into growing commercial income in these conservancies. It's not about making NRT sustainable. It's about making these community conservancies, these community institutions that are the drivers, sustainable. And so what we do is that we're trying to grow commercial income into these community conservancies. Number two, we're also trying to attract public funding. And for the last 3 years, we have seen increased public funding to these conservancies. And in particular, because in the country now, Kenya, we've got the devolved government system. And so at the grassroots, the local communities are talking to their governments. And so we are seeing now increasingly the government putting funding into these conservancies. And that's good for us, because what we like to see, we like to grow commercial income and public funding into supporting these initiatives, because most of them are also public service type of work. And so that, we reduce on the donor funding. We're also exploring the possibility of some sort of an endowment trust fund, or whatever we can call it, or sinking funding, so that they tap on that. And we're also still looking into green energy and see how they can make money out of there. But essentially, what we are looking at is tapping on more commerce and more public government funding, and probably into the future, less sort of donor funding. But as we stand right now, we are majorly donor funded. But currently, a number of the conservancies are able to self-generate about 40, 50% of what they require annually to operate.
Thank you. I must admit, every single time that you answer another question, I get more impressed by the work that you're doing and the degree that you've thought out the challenges that you face, and the need to make sure that this is sustainable in the long run. So I'm going to invite Dean McGill back up for a second to close out this award ceremony and invite everyone to the reception.
Well, I just want to echo with what Professor Thompson said, which is we are honored to be able to honor your work, Tom, and we hope it extends, serves as a model for other parts of the continent and the world. The work is amazing, so it's a privilege for us to be able to recognize it, and to have the bright name attached to it, I hope will be useful to you in your future work. So thank you all for coming. We are going to have a reception just just next door. So please join me in thanking Tom again for being with us, as well as Grace, and join us for a reception.